Hello everyone, welcome to my channel Shdows Secret. Tonight, we dive deep into one of the most chilling mysteries whispered about in dark corners, a place that has been avoided by villagers for decades, and feared by travelers who dare to wander near it after sundown. This is the story of the cursed train tunnel Voices of the Dead at Midnight. Hidden among the twisting hills and dense forests of an old countryside lies a railway tunnel, built more than a century ago, during an era when progress demanded sacrifice and human lives were often the price paid. From the outside, the tunnel looks ordinary, a dark yawning mouth carved into stone, its edges crumbling rusted tracks leading into shadows. But the moment you step closer, the air changes, colder, heavier, and filled with a silence so suffocating that even the bravest hearts hesitate. Locals claim the tunnel is cursed. They say that if you enter at midnight, you will hear whispers echoing along the damp stone walls, whispers that don't belong to the living. Some describe these sounds as the moaning of the damned, others as the chilling voices of those who met their tragic end within the tunnel. And if you linger too long, the voices may follow you home, tormenting you until you break. The origin of this curse traces back to the tunnel's construction in the late 1800s. At that time, hundreds of laborers were brought in to carve a passage through the rocky mountain. The conditions were brutal. Men worked long hours with little food, no proper safety measures, and constant exposure to dynamite blasts. Many perished during the work, rocks collapsed, explosions misfired, and in the darkness of the half-finished tunnel, blood was spilled again and again. But the railway companies didn't care. For them, the lives of the workers were replaceable, the tunnel was not. One particular tragedy, however, sealed the tunnel's fate forever. During the final stages of construction, a massive cave-in occurred inside. Dozens of workers were buried alive, their screams echoing for hours as their comrades tried desperately to dig them out. But the rocks kept falling, the air grew thinner, and soon the cries faded into silence. Their bodies were never recovered. Rather than delay the project, the company sealed parts of the collapsed section and declared the tunnel complete. In essence, those workers were entombed within the very walls they had built. From that moment on, strange events began. Train operators reported hearing voices late at night as their engines passed through the tunnel. Cries of pain, whispers calling their names, sometimes even the sound of pounding fists against the walls. Some trains would inexplicably stall in the middle of the tunnel, their lights flickering out, leaving passengers in complete darkness. When the engines roared back to life, people described seeing ghostly figures in the smoke, pale faces pressed against the windows, eyes filled with terror. The most infamous incident occurred in the 1920s when a passenger train entered the tunnel and never came out the other side. Search teams found the train still inside, but its passengers were missing. Every seat was empty, every door closed, and yet their belongings remained. Suitcases, coats, and hats were left untouched. The people had simply vanished. The newspapers of the time tried to dismiss the story, calling it superstition or a cover-up. But locals knew the truth. The dead had claimed new victims. For decades, the tunnel was still in use. But with each passing year, the legends grew darker. Railway workers refused to take night shifts near the tunnel. Conductors demanded extra pay to pass through after sunset. Travelers, if forced to cross, whispered prayers and refused to look out the windows. By the mid-20th century, the line was finally abandoned. The tunnel was left to rot, its entrance blocked by overgrowth and rusting gates. Yet the stories did not die. Instead, they grew stronger. Modern day explorers, thrill seekers, and ghost hunters have tried to uncover the truth. Many carry cameras and recorders, hoping to capture proof of the voices. And indeed, recordings exist where faint whispers can be heard, even when no one was inside. Some investigators claim to have heard their own names whispered back to them in the darkness. Others describe a sudden drop in temperature, shadows moving against the walls, and the overwhelming feeling that dozens of unseen eyes were watching them. But the most terrifying accounts come from those who stayed inside at midnight. According to legend, if you stand in the center of the tunnel when the clock strikes 12, the whispers grow louder, transforming into agonized screams. Some hear desperate cries in languages long forgotten. Others hear laughter, mocking, cruel, inhuman. The unlucky ones report seeing figures appear out of the darkness, the shapes of men covered in dust and blood, reaching out with skeletal hands. One paranormal investigator, in a report that never reached the mainstream, claimed that he saw an entire crowd of ghostly workers lining the tracks. Their faces were pale, mouths open as if screaming, and yet no sound came. When he tried to move, he realized he was surrounded, trapped by these silent apparitions. Only when he stumbled out of the tunnel's mouth did the figures vanish. He never returned, and shortly afterward, he was found dead in his home, clutching his chest, his expression frozen in horror. What makes this legend even more disturbing is the testimony of nearby villagers. Some say that on certain nights, when the wind is right, you can hear the voices from outside the tunnel, moaning, crying, sometimes even calling for help. The locals have a saying, "If the tunnel calls your name, never answer, for it means the dead want you to join them." Parents warn their children never to play near it, and travelers are told to avoid the area after dark. Skeptics argue that the voices are simply echoes, wind rushing through stone, bouncing sounds in strange ways. Others blame mass hysteria, old tales repeated so often that people begin to hear what they expect. But those who have truly stood in the tunnel's heart know there is something far more sinister at work. Something that lingers, restless, bound by the injustice of a violent death. The legend of the cursed tunnel has spread far beyond the village. Online forums are filled with chilling stories from those who claim to have visited. Some speak of hearing footsteps behind them, only to find no one there. Others say their flashlights flickered and died, leaving them in pitch black. A few admit that they left the tunnel only to hear whispers follow them home. Soft voices speaking in the dead of night, as if carried on the wind. One hiker recalled camping near the tunnel entrance. At midnight, he awoke to the sound of a train whistle, but the line had been abandoned for decades. He stepped out of his tent and watched in horror as a ghostly train, glowing faintly in the moonlight, rolled silently into the tunnel. Through its windows, he saw pale passengers, their faces twisted in agony, staring blankly ahead. The train vanished before his eyes, swallowed by darkness, leaving only the echo of a scream. Even today, the cursed tunnel remains a place of fascination. Adventurers post videos daring each other to spend a night inside, but most of those videos end abruptly, with shaky footage and terrified voices whispering, "Let's get out of here." The brave few who do complete their stay often look pale, shaken, and refuse to speak about what they experience. What lies within the tunnel at midnight? Are the whispers truly the voices of the dead, trapped forever in stone and steel, or are they the echoes of human fear, amplified by tragedy? Perhaps the truth lies somewhere in between, something born of suffering, something that feeds on the energy of those who dare to disturb its rest. But remember this, legends are not born from nothing. Behind every ghost story lies a truth, however twisted, and for the cursed train tunnel, that truth is soaked in blood, sealed in stone, and echoed forever in the voices of the dead. So if you ever find yourself wandering through the hills at night, and you stumble upon a dark, yawning tunnel hidden among the trees, think twice before stepping inside, because once the clock strikes midnight, and the whispers begin to call your name, it may already be too late. Thank you for watching Shdows Secret. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more terrifying stories from the shadows.